Hello, friends. I am here with you today to speak about something that has really been on my mind and heart lately, which is how do we handle it? How do I handle it? How do you handle it when we become disappointed with something that has happened either in a community or in a relationship? And really, communities are comprised of relationships, so it's really the same thing. I wanted to spend some time reflecting on this today with you and really making an invitation to myself and to all of you who might be listening to this or watch this video, to stretch ourselves a little bit more into this capacity for being present with one another after moments of disappointment. I've begun to realize lately that when I have become disappointed with someone in a relationship, that previously I have chosen to end the relationship or separate from that person. And the reason I chose to do that, I used to think that it was because I lost respect for that person. And that's definitely, a byproduct of disappointment sometimes. But it's also that I didn't have the skills for dealing with that disappointment, and I didn't have the way to talk to the person about why the disappointment happened. And a lot of times the disappointment happens when there's some standard that I have for myself or a value that I hold that I have not communicated to that other person, or maybe even to myself. It might even be something that I'm not even aware of. So when the person does something that doesn't live up to this previously unstated value or standard, then I become disappointed. And this happens in every relationship at some point. And I think the more we can develop skills to deal with disappointment, and a lot of times that looks like just giving the person feedback, of telling the person, hey, I'm disappointed about XYZ, and then owning why we're disappointed, and then choosing to repair it with that person. So, this can be very vulnerable work, and, and the level of intimacy and vulnerability that we're willing to share with the other person really varies a lot, depending on, if this is just a casual, community acquaintance, or if it's a friend, or if it's a coworker, or if it's a beloved, intimate partner. There's very different levels of vulnerability that we might be comfortable with. But I really want to advocate for slowing down and taking the time to communicate these disappointments with one another, because this is such valuable feedback that we have about each other that is often we don't take the time to communicate. And it can be hard sometimes to hear the feedback, and it can be hard to know how to talk about things that are kind of emerging from our subconscious that maybe we haven't felt comfortable naming before. And the more we do it, though, the better we get at it, and the more we can come into acceptance of these parts of ourselves that are causing the pain and causing the disappointment, and causing the disconnection in the relationship. So it would probably be good if I came up with some examples of things that I have, feedback that I have given, or repairs that I have tended to, and, ways that I've been able to, turn towards ruptures in relationships, losses of trust, and sometimes repair those things. Sometimes not, sometimes you just have to accept that it may be time to have some separation or part ways with the person. But this information that we have about one another and how we're showing up and how it impacts each other, in my heart and mind, that information is the gold that creates the world that I want to live in. It creates these tendrils, these weavings between each other that when we take the time to share them, it creates a different kind of frequency and vibration that we're able to inhabit together. Because it requires a gentleness and a tenderness and a care that really shifts, I think, the whole way that the world is made, or at least the whole world that each of us live in, the little kind of culture that we carry with us, right? Like, I think each one of us carries our own individual bubble of culture with us, and the relationships that we weave and connect are how that culture gets created. So I'm going to pause here. And rather than press pause on the video, I'm just going to pause with you and breathe with you as I feel back into, some of these different ruptures and areas of repair that I have had with friends and community members, and because really I want this little video to be an invitation to those of you who, for whatever reason have felt called to listen to this, and those of you who are light workers and who feel drawn to continue to weave a new culture for ourselves living on this planet, a new culture of connection and community instead of separation and isolation. So, as I think back into examples that I might want to share, or stories that I might want to share, because I've had many, many, many of them over my adult life. Before I go there, one other thing that I want to say is that that I think the parent value that is important in doing this work around repair and feedback and dealing with disappointment in relationships, one of the core values there is a willingness to be present with another person in a state of the unknown and potential discomfort. And I love this phrase of risking our significance, where we're not trying to show up and be right or be seen in any particular way. We're just showing up out of curiosity and love and a willingness to continue to invest in the relationship with the person. And sometimes that willingness is just not there because we deem that the relationship just isn't worth it for some reason or another. Maybe there's just been too much pain or trauma there for us. It's just too triggering and we're not able to show up with that person. And, that happens. And of course that's okay. But I really want this video to be an invitation to create a new set of agreements with each other where we do have a commitment to show up in the discomfort with one another and to ask the questions and to be curious about ourselves and about the other person. So maybe the example that I'll bring up is an example I've had with a friend where I had posted some things on the internet on Facebook that made her uncomfortable and caused her to lose respect for me because it didn't meet the standards that she had for herself, of how the level of care and precision of language and self responsibility. I was showing up and just sort of venting about something that had happened. This was about COVID and about when I chose to be vaccinated when previously I'd been unvaccinated. And this friend felt very disappointed in how I chose to show up and share about my decision. And so this led to a lot of contemplation on my part about, why I posted, and really led me to look at some shadows in myself of, and led me to come to a place where, I wanted to be the very careful, intentional, thorough person that she wanted me to be. But I also realized that in that moment, I just wasn't that careful, intentional person. I was showing up because I was trying to get an emotional need met of being seen and sharing with the community and just venting. And so I was very much serving my personal needs instead of showing up in a leadership capacity, which is what she had been expecting from me or hoping for me. And she and I continued to have conversations about this disappointment. And, it made me very sad to realize that I had lost her respect. And, she never said this to me explicitly, but the sense that I was sitting with was that she had lost respect for me as a leader because I had shown up in this careless way. And this isn't the first time that I've lost someone's respect because I show up in a way that is not as careful or as thoughtful as they were wanting me to be. And so what that led me to do was to really look at myself and feel some sadness around my lack of care and thoughtfulness and thoroughness and intention. And also just accept that, I showed up in that moment in a way that met a need for me, and I was willing to tend to the harm and the impact that it had on this other person as best I could. But that really I just wanted to accept that I showed up in the way that worked for me in that moment. And that I accepted of myself that I was not that maybe higher version of myself that this other person wanted me to be. And that just felt deeply healing, that I could just kind of let myself off the hook of not trying to be this, be this version of myself that I just wasn't. So that was a big learning and a big shift for me, and definitely led to more self-acceptance, I think. And I feel grateful that we have been able to stay in communication and conversation about it. And that's just one example of a repair process. It was a very deep, beautiful example. Also, probably would have been better if I'd shared some more like light examples there, but that's what happened to show up. So before I wrap this up, I just I want to come back to this question of respect and how we kind of reward others with respect, like what the algorithm is for why we respect other humans. And the thing that I'm really sitting with right now is that I respect other humans a lot when they are willing to stay in connection with me, despite pain and hurt and discomfort, and the unknown, not knowing where we're going to go together or if we will go anywhere together. Whether that's in community or, in personal relationships. So I think that's really maybe the ask that I have, or the invitation that this video is all about, is inviting each of you to welcome the skills and to be interested in developing the skills for being disappointed with one another and still staying in connection and staying in the question together of, wow, I'm disappointed right now, and I would like to harvest or maintain or cultivate respect for you and with you by staying in connection with you, even though I am disappointed. Yeah. And that seems like such big and deep work. It's such a lot to ask, really. And there are sometimes where, we're so triggered or so in trauma, or if it's an abusive situation where, active harm is actually happening to us, then that is not a time to try to stay in connection with the person. So I want to be very clear about that. But I'm so curious about this process of prioritizing care for the person, and preserving the respect, even in the presence of disappointment, and how we can continue to develop those skills and practices and tools for having these challenging conversations with one another. So I'll pause there. I have no idea how this is all coming out, but it just felt like something, like I said, that's been very alive for me. And maybe I'll close with just an invitation to soul family, because it feels like those of us who are on this path of leaning in towards connection and learning and curiosity, even in moments of disappointment, to me, it seems like y'all are my soul family, and I want to learn this together with you. And I want to learn what you're learning about, what comes up for you when you try to practice in that way, what works, what doesn't, what agreements we need to set up with each other, at the beginning of a relationship before it even gets to that point of disappointment or disconnection. I'm so curious about those kinds of conscious ways of relating. So thank you for being present with me, following these meandering thoughts, and sending you much love.